You're required to be there, move to the federal level exchange, and in year 2, dismantle that program. We cannot afford to do otherwise. And we need to allow insurance to be purchased across state lines. We need to work with those states around us in this country to make sure that happens. These are the ways we'll get better quality insurance.
Yeah, he wants to cut it off. As criminal, you're going to have death panels. Bevan's death panels.
I'm like Mac. I mean, Matt, I will take it down. The first thing I do is executive order on December 8th, right after I'm...
Oh, come on, Will T.
But let me tell you something else. And I'll give him the thumb cash. And it'll go on the federal website. You can just click on the states and hit KY, and then all our information will be there. So I'm not going to hurt anybody on that.
So they're all for federalizing it? Federal governments? I thought they was against Obama. They're saying giving all the power to Obama, give the states rights, or giving our sovereignty up. It's our health care. Fuck the federal government.
They're to look for money for next year. The only thing that's going to come out is a cockroach on crutches with tears in its eyes. That's what we're going to face. And that's why we need to have government for the next 24 years, and we'll give them the same cockroach back 4 years later.
Cockroach? What the fuck is he talking about?
That's hard to follow. Judge, that's awesome.
That's a tough act to follow, no doubt.
Yeah, that's awesome, Judge. Yeah, Obamacare is killing, and I stand with Senator Paul and Senator McConnell, calling for the full...
fuck that, they ain't even from Kentucky.
...system Earth has ever seen, this planet has ever seen, and attempting to dismantle it. We have to end Obamacare. Here in Kentucky, our governor just signed up for his version of Obamacare. He got a State of the Union cameo and all of that, but he signed up for a plan that's a 3-year... no payment plan with absolutely no plan on how to make the payment when it comes due starting in 2017. It's not sustainable. I would close Connect as we know it today. The rest of that question is, where do you go then? What do you do? You know, if you look around the country at what other conservative Republican governors are doing, they're finding ways to keep their rural health systems alive. And the way they're doing it is by bringing in new systems that have levels of personal responsibility, that are bringing in premiums, that are bringing in incentives for primary care rather than using the emergency room, that are using it as ways to get people into employment and off of Medicaid. Those are the kinds of ideas. Bill Haslam, I think I'm out of time here, but Bill Haslam in Tennessee has proposed an idea for Tennessee that has zero impact on their budget. Those are the kind of conservative ideas we need to have in Kentucky, something that's sustainable. What we have today isn't sustainable and would need to be ended.
This is James Comer. I have a plan on jamescomer.com, a plan for a healthier Kentucky that goes into very specific detail. I've been very clear that in my position on Obamacare, I will say it again. Obamacare is the worst piece of legislation in my lifetime. I call for Congressman...
Worse than the Patriot Act, you piece of shit!
I call for Senator Paul, Senator McConnell to repeal Obamacare.
Oh, you're wrong. You're so fucking wrong about it. You'll get the Republican vote, but you lost my fucking vote. That's criminal. Y'all talking about throwing people, grandmothers and grandfathers, James Comer's death panels.
It's simply an exchange. I will dismantle Connect.
Yeah, you all will fuck up our healthcare system. Yeah, let's give the Republicans, let's put the Republicans in charge of healthcare. They do such a good job.
The problem in Kentucky is when you go on Connect.
We're only number one for fucking cancer. Yeah, it's not like we actually need this shit.
As a result of that, 25% of the state's now on Medicaid. That's not sustainable. My plan for a healthier Kentucky talks about how we get people off Medicaid and into private health care. This all starts...
It's sustainable. How long have we had Medicaid? Since the 1970s?
That pay health care benefits to their employees.
Let me get another question in here, gentlemen. I'm going to ask you to respect the 1 minute time limit here. You guys may disagree, but
it seems like that's recent. That's some recent phenomenons we're kind of seeing. In general, it has been. So if, like, in general, if history is any indications, Hal Heiner, we should just give it to Hal Heiner, not even have an election. Why even have the illusion?
Is he the richest one of them all?
He's the one that's put $4 million into the thing. So I don't know if he's richest, but he's put more money into the campaign out of all of them.
Conway's pretty rich, too.
He's got $2 million. So he's half of a Hal Heiner if you just look at that.
This is exactly the reason I filed this lawsuit. Money should not decide primary or general elections. It should be the voters. in a free and fair election, whether it's a primary or a general. I am completely opposed to the idea that money should determine the outcome.
Who would be a better governor between you and who's your opponent, the other guy?
Jack Conway?
You're right.
Obviously, I would. Jack Conway has no morals. He's morally unfit to serve as governor of Kentucky. And I say that primarily because he was running for Congress in Jefferson County in 2002. And before the general election, 5 months before the war in Iraq, Jack Conway stood up there at a press conference and said, "I support the president. I support his policy in the Middle East." And he gave George Bush and Dick Cheney a blank check to invade Iraq. And that was unforgivable, in my opinion. That shows he has no morals. He also has no understanding of international law and no understanding of the Constitution.
He didn't have moral clarity, at least, I think you could say. You think, because a lot of people will say that they were misled. They said that Bush got faulty intelligence, and even Hillary Clinton voted for the war.
All of my friends and I were quite aware. We didn't know for sure whether Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction or not, but we were totally certain throughout the entire year of 2002 that the U.S. invasion of Iraq was absolutely unjustified. We knew that Bush was lusting to invade Iraq, kill Saddam Hussein, and it was all totally illegal. Whether he had weapons of mass destruction, a few rusty ones or not, was irrelevant. The Charter of the United Nations, which was written right after the end of World War II to prevent another world war, it states as clearly as possible, aggression is illegal. And all of my colleagues and I knew from the alternative media, from the critical media, that the entire case to invade Iraq was fraudulent. If Jack Conway didn't know that, one thing he knew nothing about the law, and secondly, he knew nothing about justice.
I would think just your policies, just period. You'd be a better governor because you'd have better policies for working class, for unions, for middle class, right. For just run the gauntlet: healthcare, education, tax reform. So not only are you more moral, but I think you could also turn Kentucky around. I think you could make it from one of the poorest states to one of the richest states.
Well, that will take a while.
Do you disagree or agree? Any comments on that?
That would take more than 4 years. Might take 2 terms to accomplish all that. But no.
Someone did say
if I'm elected, I have an ambition to be the most pro-union governor in Kentucky's history. And unions grow the middle class. What we have now is an ongoing, for the last 30 years or so, a real class war between the 1% of the population that's most powerful and most wealthy against everybody else. And I'm on the side of the 99%. I will defeat all of these proposals for right to bust union legislation. That's off the table. Right to bust unions is going to be off the table in a young administration.
What do you think about Sweden's trash to electricity program?
We should look at that. If it can be done with minimal air pollution, we should do it.
What do you think about legalizing recreational cannabis?
I'm in favor.
So
I think it could be a very valuable cash crop for Kentucky.
So how do you interpret the heroin bill that was just recently passed?
It had good points and bad points.
because it seemed like a schizophrenic. It was escalating the harsher penalties, so it's escalating the war on drugs, but also at the same time passing out needles and having a Good Samaritan clause.
I feel that's correct.
Okay.
On the abortion issue,
Yeah.
all of the Republican candidates, all four of them, have now come out claiming in their ads that they are pro-life. They're all lying. The data from around the world proves that making all abortions illegal from conception on actually raises the abortion rate. It doesn't decrease the abortion rate. And so there are more abortions from the policies that the Republican Party has written in stone into its platform since 1980. And that would make the abortion problem worse. I'm the pro-life candidate. I want to promote Planned Parenthood strategy, which is accurate information for young people about sex, birth control, contraception, and making abortions available during the first trimester, which is in agreement with Roe versus Wade, Supreme Court decision. I agree with that decision. And the ironic thing about it is that lowers the abortion rate. We know what works. The Republican so-called human life amendment does not work. It's counterproductive. It's immoral. Any Republican who does not denounce his own party's platform on abortion is a liar.
What do you think?
He's anti-life.
What are your thoughts on the racism in Kentucky? Is there any, and if so, what can we do about it?
On institutional racism, not individual prejudice between one
You allow that to happen?
and another.
You think that's okay?
I think it will always be with us. It's an evil that cannot be
So couldn't you pass a law to allow us to spit on someone who says like the N-word?
Spitting, there are laws against that. There are laws against going up and hitting somebody.
But I mean, that's hate speech, using the N-word. Or you think freedom of speech trumps?
Actually, I do.
Allowing.
I'm not a fan of.
So then let's focus on the
speech laws.
Then let's focus on the institutional racism.
Institutional
what specific?
Racism. The perfect example of that was the warning envelope that Mitch McConnell's campaign and the chair of the Kentucky Republican Party, Steve Robertson, intentionally sent out to poor people, voters, probably most of them registered Democrats, most or all of them, we don't know. They sent thousands of these envelopes out saying, voting violation, beware, you are at risk. And somebody receiving that kind of letter didn't even have to open it. All they had to do was look at the outside of the envelope, and if they were wobbling about whether to go vote next Tuesday or not, this was late October, early November 2014, the average person would have said, I'm not going to risk being arrested for voting fraud. Voter intimidation, voter suppression. There are laws against that. There's a state law and there's a federal law, and they're felonies. Mitch McConnell should be in a federal prison for intimidating voters last November.
How come he's not in a prison?
I filed a complaint.
I mean, if he broke the law, a felony.
I filed a report with the FBI.
Shouldn't a police officer just arrest him as soon as they see him?
They should, but
they're scared of him.
He was running against Allison Lundergan Grimes, who, instead of enforcing these laws against voter intimidation, she filed a very weak, sloppy civil lawsuit against Steve Robertson, the Republican Party chair. I read it. It was pathetic. And the Republican lawyers just shredded it and she gave up. She and the Attorney General, supposedly the top law enforcement official, top attorney in Kentucky, Jack Conway, should have filed criminal charges against Mitch McConnell and Steve Robertson. That's what I call racism. Voter suppression is racism.
Even if no black people were suppressed
no, because
from voting?
they use the same tactic all across the country.
When I think
and
of
in other states, it is racial.
I wouldn't doubt if there might be some racial intentions behind it. When I think of institutional racism, I think of prisons, and I think of police brutality and the war on drugs.
Right.
Yeah, so you agree with all those?
I agree with there are serious problems in our criminal justice system, and the results come out racially biased. I want to put a stop to that.
You kind of bring up an interesting argument, actually, briefly about the free speech and hate speech.
Yep.
You're in favor of the 1964 Civil Rights Act?
Yes.
Rand Paul's argument was sort of like Indiana's religious freedom law, that a private business, while it's despicable, should be allowed to serve whoever they want to serve. And, you know, he would never attend a racist or a homophobic place. Mm-hmm. But since it's a free country and it's a private business, mm-hmm. they should be allowed to do what they want, which actually flies in the face of the Civil Rights Act of '64. What are your thoughts about that?
Our country has a shameful history of racism for hundreds of years, ever since it was first colonized by Europeans. And for Rand Paul to say that the Civil Rights Act was not necessary ignores almost all of American history.
He says that at the time it would be needed, but the fact that he has reservations, it seems like it's on flimsy foundation. It seems like they want to try to get rid of it.
To me, that suggests that he thinks it's no longer needed in 2015. I disagree with him. Racism is not over in this country.
But we have a black president. It's a post-racial society. You know what?
I'm talking about institutional racism. I'm talking about racism. Racism, to me, it is defined as prejudice plus power. We still have plenty of corporate systems in this country. You mentioned the justice system, the entire legal system, where racism continues to exist. We have sentencing laws for different forms of cocaine, powder cocaine versus crack cocaine.
Which do you prefer?
Appears to be racially motivated, and it's taken I don't know how many decades, and those laws are still on the books. That racial disparity is still on the books. I don't like any addictive drugs.
The one thing you and I, none, so no coffee, no nicotine, no. What about sugar? You ever get your daily intake of sugar?
Your point is well taken.
Which one? Well, I don't know what my point is.
You get a point there.
You drink coffee?
Plenty of drugs that are legal are addictive. I'll acknowledge that.
Are you a coffee drinker? Is that what I found out?
Once a week.
Watch out. One issue you and I actually kind of disagree on, the death penalty. Marco Chapman had slit the throats of 2 children, and it just seems like such a heinous crime that he deserved the death that he got that was administered by the state, and he was the last person that was killed in Kentucky, by the state. So what are your thoughts about the death penalty?
I want to abolish it permanently. Even though some of the people who are executed are terrible criminals, the death penalty system itself is not administered fairly, and there have been cases proven cases where an innocent person was executed, and that is
in Texas just recently.
There's no excuse for that. So I'm opposed to the death penalty. Period. It's also cheaper to do away with it. It's extremely expensive to try to maintain a two-class justice system, one that handles only death penalty cases and the other that handles everything else. I'm opposed to it morally.
Okay. I guess that's it. Is there,
Yeah, good. That's plenty.
Okay.
We got enough material.
On behalf of CHWN, certainly we're not going to oppose the ultimate dismissal of the case that was brought against us. That would seem to be unwise, but we did want to note that we did believe that we were waiting on a ruling from the court. We had notice of submission of the case that had been briefed. However, obviously, in light of everybody's progress, one of the students has graduated and progressed on post-high school, and then the other one has now completed his high school eligibility. So it would seem to be, yeah, it seems like there's a pretty good argument for mootness there, and if that's the court's inclination to dismiss it on the mootness, we certainly wouldn't object and we'd sign up.
I'll look it over and see. I don't know where we're at. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Yes, ma'am. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Let's have, okay. Let's see where we're at on, where's Mr. K at? With the glasses on. Okay, formally here, you're all scheduled. And this is some kind of a motion. We're having a hard time finding the motion. We know that it's, we have a motion on, but because this file's getting pretty thick, I don't know if we've got the motion. Okay? So it's your motion, right? Yes. Okay, yeah, that'd be nice. Emergency motion of the Family Coalition to order preservation of evidence. Okay. You don't have any opposition.
Well, and just...
I mean, this is preservation of evidence.
But there's some logistical problems in that we don't control. I got the motion at about 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, driving in my car back from spring break, so there's obviously a bit of a time.
Where'd you all go?
Down the Charleston area, Island Palms.
We just got back from Island Palms not too long ago. That's a pretty nice place. We've been going there for 30 years.
Yeah, we've been going for a few years as well. Had a good time. So obviously there's been no time to respond or barely even process the motion. As I read it, I mean, what we're talking about, I think what Mr. K was asking is for every single machine that's ever been at Kentucky Downs to be secured somewhere, which is practically...
What about, just one of the machines? I mean, that would be good enough. I would think they probably all work the same. Don't you think so, Mr. K?
Well, they have said, and I can read the transcripts from the previous hearing where they have said they did not.
So the machines work differently?
That's what they said, because Your Honor recall September 20th of 2010, they had a hearing in this country. You may not recall it, but I got the transcript of it. Trying to explain about how the regulations interacted with the patent against racing machines. And Mr. Snyder was there back at Churchill Downs, as well as Ms. Hopkins, who was counsel for the Racing Commission, who denied that was the case. So I think they asked for the machines to be declared as their laws to be declared illegal. Their lawsuit, now they need to make sure that I have access to the machines.
I think any of the machines that are, you ought to have one of them of each one. I don't know how many there are. How many machines are there?
Several hundred, and it's the way...
Several hundred?
Yeah.
There are about 600.
600
I don't think
machines.
there were 600, but there were several
500?
It was not 500 because we just...
Well, how about this? How many different types of machines are there?
Well, the answer, there are But unless you have the technology that goes in them, they don't do anything. And I could bring a machine right here and it wouldn't do anything unless it was hooked up to the parimutuel network.
Right.
There are several classes of machines. They're essentially just terminals. Some were leased from Racetech, some were purchased, and some were purchased from Amtote, some were leased from Amtote. But I think they're all essentially the same machine. They just need the software.
Why don't we do this? You need a chance to respond to this.
Yes, sir.
Why don't we give you a week for you to figure all this out? I mean, it's hard for me to make a decision when we don't know how many machines, and until then, we'll just preserve those machines, and then we'll par it down after that. Is that all right, Mr. Kay?
Yes, that's what Your Honor wants to do. I'd first like that we do no harm.
Right.
You tell them to maintain the machines at Kentucky Downs right now. So
until you can, maintain the machines until we can get this figured out. How many, what I'm thinking about it is, I think your name's Jay, right?
Correct.
Okay. And Jay, what I'm thinking is that we would just have one of each machine that would still be there, and then have access to the, technology as it relates to the software at some time, so that at least they can look at it. Because switching machines is sort of something I don't think we anticipated. Did you, Mr. Kay?
Oh, no, sir. I thought that they're under a legal duty to make sure to preserve, maintain.
So preserve them, and Mr. Kay, you can tender me an order on this as of your motion. Just preserve the machines until next week, and then, Jay, if you will just get back with them and find out how many different of these machines there are, and how many are leased, and how many are been purchased by the facility.
Certainly will, sir.
And if you just have to put them in somewhere else, put them in somewhere else.
And with one caveat, some of these machines are not in Kentucky Downs control. The ones that are leased, Racetech was coming to pick them up late last week. I don't know if they have.
Well, if they haven't picked them up, let's just tell them to wait.
And I'll do my best, but
yeah.
I can't control Racetech.
I can control Racetech.
I was going to say, what if they have come to pick them up, they need to bring them back?
Well, we'll cross that bridge next week.
Yeah, I don't know if they have or not. And I don't represent Racetech.
Right.
Racetech's not in this lawsuit. I will certainly convey the message, Judge.
Yeah, tell them that, they need to just wait.
I will convey
this
that.
This is all under litigation, and, they need to just wait about that, because this, I think you all were under a duty to tell him that this was coming down, with this case going on, and that needs to occur. You shouldn't be switching the machines in the middle of the litigation, or if you are going to switch machines, there should be some type of a plan to, at least preserve some type of the evidence of these machines.
Well, certainly.
And it's probably the testimony, I'm just guessing that the machines that are replacing them are probably operate the same way. I mean, that's probably going to be the testimony, I would assume, but, I've learned in this business you can't really assume anything. So let's see if we can do that and then reconvene. Now, if you all come to some type of an agreement on these machines, just let me know, but you do need to refile your motion, Mr. Kay, okay, for next Wednesday, and then you'll respond, okay?
And Your Honor, just for clarification, it was Racetech terminated
Your all's deal.
The agreement. So there's another provider that now Racetech was the only provider before. They terminated, and there's a new provider. That was the reason, and it was of public record. It went before the Racing Commission.
Okay.
Mr. Kay was well aware of that.
No, I was not notified anything going on. I read the newspaper. That's what's attached to my motion. They gave me notice of nothing. And,
I don't think that you can assume that he follows this stuff. Like, you don't attend all those Racing Commission meetings or anything.
No, because many of them are not held at the Racing Commission. They're held at law firms, before that they have, that's in the record too, where they have meetings before the Racing Commission convenes, and then they decide what they're going to do, and then they have the Racing Commission meeting. There's no discussion of anything. But no, I don't get any notice of what's going on.
Well, if we're changing machines and stuff, I high level of litigation is, we need to give notice.
My understanding is Mr. Cave asked to speak at the Racing Commission meeting, so I think he was well aware of it.
No, sir. I haven't been to a racing commission meeting since July the 14th, 2011. That's where I saw you, Jay. But I haven't been to one.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, y'all can flesh all that out. If y'all come to some type of agreement, you know, I always encourage you on these discovery deals. If y'all can come to some type of agreement, if not, file your motion for next Wednesday. You know what the substance of it is, so you can go ahead and file a response. The only reason I'm asking you to do that, Mr. Cave, is so that it gets on the docket. Okay?
Oh, sure.
All right. Thank you all.